because you're fighting for an issue, you're advocating for an issue, and you're not doing stuff because of the event. I also want KP to be more visible in the UCB community, such as our fight for the AppyMed Research Center, which I'm not going to say that. Do you want me to say that?
Sure.
Let's
do it.
Islander Middle Eastern Desi American Research Resource Center.
Hey.
And also the Critical Asian American Studies minor. I also want to foster growth in board and to make sure that there's retention in the board space. It's hard to start with a board that's one of the biggest doubts that people had with our board this year was that we were all new, and I'm pretty sure that we kind of proved them wrong. I hope so, at least.
Yes.
But at the same time, I saw the value of having people and mentors that do come back to the board space, because some people may think it's toxic, but if you have the good execs and good people within board that do their job, then I don't think the space is toxic. At the same time, I don't believe the space is toxic. I believe the people in board can be toxic. And I want to enforce accountability within board members so that other board members don't think it's toxic, because if we all work together and do our job, then board should be a breeze.
Yes.
I don't remember any other thing I was supposed to say. James first. We get executed early.
Yeah, I can tell.
Okay, so sometimes it appears as though positions under different pillars have to compete for resources and support within the board space. So how do you intend to keep a balanced and intersectional understanding and practice of the pillars?
I think it goes back with my wanting of changing it from an event-based org to an issue-based org. There's intersectionalities between all the pillars with all our events. Resources-wise, KP has this mindset that we need to have these events every year. So that's pretty hard to do, and I really think that it's on the board members themselves to change that thinking, and through the execs to make them realize that you're doing this for a greater cause and not just for your event. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, so how do you intend to... yeah, how do you intend to keep the balance between the pillars and keep them intersectional?
I feel like every event should at least incorporate something of the other pillars for it to be balanced, because with KP being so structured, and we're so structured that other orgs want to be like us. Like, that's something to say. That with that, it's I feel like it's inherent in us for being Filipinos that we're narrow-minded sometimes, that we want it to happen. But if we kind of like tweak some stuff and hey, like, you know, it's a collective. We're a collective, and if we all work together for that one event, then I don't feel there should be disparities between any events or any pillar for that matter. Pillar. You were first.
Already facilitated.
As chair of the executive committee for sponsoring growth, not only within your board members, but how will you do this within your exec team?
Can you repeat that? I can't hear.
Do you need it? Can I answer it? I don't see board as hierarchical when it shouldn't, unless it's needed to, because it's like something that's there when it has to be there. That growth thing is really big on me, and I feel like the only thing we need is personal relationships with each other, and that what I learned from this year with being co-cultural coordinator is that not only compromise, but we don't have to talk about work all the time. Because if you talk about work all the time to your execs, and that's the only thing you talk about, then your relationship is basically about KP, and it doesn't mean that it gets toxic. It gets tiring, because to practice self-care, you should not really think about your job. And if you're not in a board meeting or an exec meeting, why should you talk about board stuff. Like I think that really personal relationships and friendships should be established between the execs and the whole board for growth to happen. Yeah.
So, as mentioned earlier, KP is often known as being very cliquey, but this can also even apply within the board space. So, people have complained before about the board itself being too cliquey. I think that's only 20 people, 19 people. How do you plan, as the leader of this group of people, how do you plan on promoting positive interaction between your members so that this idea of clickiness does not apply to the board space?
One thing I learned from FCC is that I know that SDSU has special buddies, and we use that for PCT, and I think it worked. But having SSBs within boards so that they are paired with somebody that they probably won't talk to. Also, we tried this with our board that everyone's paired with a different person every week, and they share a computer. So they're engaged during board meeting, and if this person can't go to Facebook, then the other person can't. And but I feel like just mixing it up and just even board meetings when people are just like clumping together, and they've been clumping together every week. That's already, I guess you're kind of forming a clique. But mixing them up and just, I guess even like joint one-to-one, and when I check in with them, or just, not forcing them, but like, yeah, with them having an SB, I feel like they're forced to step out of their comfort zone and like meet other people that they probably won't even talk to if you don't tell them to.
Okay, so KP being a part of Kapwata, which includes Push, Kamalan Collective, and Kabayanihan, how would you bridge the gap between these four orgs, and how would you apply their own mission statements to the members for KP, since all of these orgs are vital in the experience for Filipino American students here at UCSD?
I think before one thing that we should do right away, I feel like Kapatao is not, it's an idea, it's not an entity. So I think that there should be something that should formalize Kapatao itself, have a constitution or something, and have every Kapatao or abide by that constitution. I don't know how we're going to go on with that, but at the same time, I feel like there should be at least a Kapatao event at least once a year. Let's start once a year. Once a quarter is pushing it. Also, there should really be communication between all the Kapatao orgs. It was really like, it was heartwarming when the typhoon came, and during Makasama, all the orgs were like together and like they helped with the dance, helped with everything to raise funds for the Philippines. But we don't need, and we shouldn't need, a disastrous event to unite the Filipino orgs on campus. So I really think that you should formalize Kapatao itself before we can go forward with more, more action. Yeah.
As a Filipino organization, the month of October is Filipino Heritage Month. We as Filipino are busy during October because of welcoming bonfires, such as these events. Do you plan on celebrating Filipino Heritage Month? If so, what are your plans, and how do you plan to delegate funds?
One thing that I pride on for being Kogo this year was my co-Cristiano and I had Filipino American Heritage Month GBM, and we actually constitutionalized that this year, so the Kogos will have that, so that's part of delegation. Also, the awareness codes have a lot of potential in workshops, so they can start with that. I was actually planning on even like incorporating KP Star with that and having a tanghalian, because that's also one thing to like, I don't know, it's free food. Like, all the first years want free food. That's one thing for them to access the space, I guess. But we have so many resources on campus. The only tricky part is that logistical stuff is that you have to turn in your budget proposals by now for next year, because if especially if we're starting later next year, is that most budgets are 3 weeks in advance, and we can't really do that. Really given the time, but it was actually one of my plans to have like a series of events during October that isn't like a heavy burden, and that includes like the typical stuff that we have, so like Mustahan or Orientacion, I mean, the core and star GBM to introduce the other components of KP, the Philippine American Heritage GBM, and also like just talking to like the resources we have on campus. Amanda Solomon, for one, is always there. She's a really great supporter of just the Filipino community here at UCSD, and she helped us with Paul in the class that we started this year. But I feel like just talking with them, K. Joseph, and really, if I get elected and get that ball rolling right away, can help me and can actually initiate a celebration during October, because like before PAW was actually in October, but they moved it to April, so I feel like there should be something in October that celebrates Filipino heritage.
Knowing that like people on board will be like friends with you and you'll know them, what does accountability look like to you, and how do you plan to implement that as chair for?
There's actually procedures on that in the Constitution, and so the one thing that we should do is follow the Constitution. One thing that one should do as they enter art space, like what Zara said, is they should remove their friend like hat or like their kuya at their auding hat, because once you get into that space, you're coworkers, and that you should treat board as a working space, because if you don't, then it becomes a poison to the other board members because you're not doing your job. And yeah, just calling them out if needed be. There's also other execs for that, and it shouldn't be a personal attack if like the execs go to you and say, hey, can you do your job because you're not doing it? And at the same time, it's in the Constitution, so whatever the Constitution says, we should follow.
What is your understanding of KP's role within the SAC community as a campus climate council?
For a good while, I know that KP didn't have a seat in the campus climate council, and I think it was Jay that made us have a seat there. So there was actually, I think there was a poll, or like the results of a poll came out that people thought that the campus climate was comfortable, which is completely wrong. So we should be an advocate for that, because I feel like we are still underrepresented, hence the fact that we don't even have a minor, nor we don't even have a center. In SAC, I know that they don't think that we're as political as others, but I don't think that should be measured by numbers, because they think that just because KP has like hundreds of members, that we're going to have hundreds of members come during March 4th. I think that it's a dedication of people on board on how it changes, and the changes that they can make, because KP is an ignorant space, because I feel like Filipinos are just ignorant by nature. We're hard-headed, so we don't really want change, but slowly but surely the space is changing. Just think about the name last year. That was very controversial. Like, some people don't believe in that, but it's still happening. So I think that it's a process, and I know that trust the process is cliche, but if you don't trust the process, then I don't think anything's going to happen. And that the process shouldn't be rushed, because anything that is rushed isn't worthwhile. And at the same time, I don't think that anything without a struggle to changing something, like if something's easy, then it's not worthwhile for me. And for you to make a space political or more political is a struggle that we should address and that we should work on slowly and not force people to do it. Yeah, I think I answered it. Yeah. There's
Some people have mentioned that there's a specific toxicity that exists within the space. What do you plan to do as chair to reduce that, and what do you think causes that?
I felt that in the board space, but then I realized that the space isn't toxic. It's people that don't do their job on board that are toxic. So again, there's bylaws in the Constitution that lay out plans for you when you want to call somebody out, and you should enforce that. Because if you don't address it, then it's just going to happen, and that makes the space toxic. I feel like, yeah, you just look at who the problem is and try to fix that. And if they don't do what their jobs, then kick them out of board. Okay.
Alright, congrats.